Thank you for joining Dr. James, Rini, and I, the Curiosity Conduit, for a look behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. With 47 years of experience as a practicing psychotherapist, Dr. Rini brings profound insight into the dimensions of consciousness. I bring my own lens as a retired law enforcement officer, now immersed in the study of psychology. Together, we invite you into a dialogue where destiny meets awareness and curiosity leads the way. Today, we will discuss the fifth pathway, which falls under avoidance. This conversation may lead to feelings of inspiration and curiosity, and it could also create some inner movement. That's all welcome. Life will reveal your destiny through all opportunities you keep yourself available for. So, allow yourself to stay open and let's see what destiny delivers. So this is the quote of avoid self-sabotage. Do not deny, disown, or repress those parts of yourself seeking expression. Instead, find safe places and safe ways to give them a voice. And it is imperative that you assume your voice and speak up for yourself. So what do you have to say about that portion?
That the self is an emerging process. And, clients will come into the office and they go, I don't really have anything to talk about today. But then they discover they had a lot to talk about. They just didn't know it was there. But it emerged because it's like a lot of times, people go to bed and you're supposed to go to sleep, but you start thinking about all the things you didn't have time to think about because you were too busy. And it's the worst time because you're trying to go to sleep, So there's always information trying to emerge and become. So becoming oneself is tuning in and being attuned to what is emerging from the self. Okay. And so the ego will go in there and go, well, that's bad, so I need to repress that. Okay. Or I don't like thinking about that, so I'm gonna distract myself so I don't have to think about it. Or somebody points something out about you, oh, that's not true. So when we deny and disown or repress parts of ourselves that are seeking expression, they become embedded and take on a life of their own. And they, in their life of their own, then develop the symptoms like depression, anxiety, physical problems, difficulty sleeping. Whereas to express them allows them to become and for you to discover what role they play or don't play in your life. And the last part is we all are wired for language. That's not an accident, okay? And that's because we have to have a voice so that we can make the world a more co-creative process. There is the world and it defines what's going on. And then there's me. I get to define it too. Like we have defined roles here in what we do. Not that we ever sat down and defined them. Okay, but it is a co-creative process. You do what you do, I do what I do, and together it makes, the behind the curtains audios. Okay. And together we make one. So you need to have that voice to make sure that whatever is going on is a co-creative process. You also have to listen and honor and host what they're saying so that, again, it's a co-creative process. Making babies is a co-creative process. The male generates the sperm, the woman the egg, they link up, and together they make a child, which is neither one of them, but containing both their genetic material.
It should work, right? There's other variances of that, but in general, yes, for sure.
Yes.
Now, those are good points, and they tie into this next quote that I'd like to go into. Just as a glove forms a barrier between your hand and an object, self-deception forms a barrier between truth and illusion. And just as a glove alters the sensation of the object being touched, self-deception alters one's sense of self and others. I love that.
Well, it speaks for itself, I guess, in that we've all worn a glove, so we know how it becomes a barrier to being in touch with those fine motor skills that we have that are necessary in doing many tasks. And in that, I'm saying the analogy to that is self-deception. When we choose to deceive ourselves, we're likewise creating this barrier between us and whatever that is to where we can't make a healthy connection because the truth is lost for the illusions that we've now taken on as truths. But it not only dulls the ability to be in touch and connected to others, but it also dulls and impairs the ability to be in touch with oneself. And therefore, it impairs our sense of self and our ability to use that sense.
So would an example of this be when, obviously not limited to this because there's many examples and it's individualized, but would one example be where someone's trying to act a certain way or dress a certain way that doesn't feel natural for themselves, but to maybe look appealing or want somebody like them better, but inside they really don't like how they really look, how they made themselves look?
I don't know. I guess the thing in that I'm saying here is self-deception.
Mhm.
You believe the illusion. You believe the lie. You know, you don't see it as just pretending.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in that example, you're doing these things that aren't true to you, but you don't understand they're not.
Correct.
Okay, and you're doing it really to whether it's how you dress or act or something like that for somebody else.
Right.
And it's not showing your true self, it's showing something that's fake to
I guess
somebody
an
else.
example that comes to mind for me and seen in therapy is that one partner is unhappy with the other, and the other partner says they're going to change. And they'll change for a month or two, and then they go back to their old behavior. So they're deceiving themselves and the other person when they're saying they're changing. No, I'm going to create the illusion that I've changed and then go back to the way I was. And it'll happen over and over again until the other partner finally says, well, I can't believe you because so many times you said you're going to change and you're not. So that's a form of self-deception if you really believe that. And then, well, I couldn't because this happened or that happened. We begin to make excuses and rationalize our behavior and deny it even. And those are forms of self-deception too.
So in a way to be able to pull yourself from that and closer to yourself would be self-reflection, is that correct?
Yes, but so many people do not use their self-reflective consciousness. You know, it makes me think of a client that I had, and he said to me, coming to you is like smoking pot, which is okay. But he went on to explain, he goes, it makes me think about all the things I don't want to think about. That he needed to think about them, you see. And the same with self-reflection. That's why we deny or disown or repress it, because we don't want to think about it. And when there's self-reflection, yeah, we're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. But as I like to say, I can handle what I know. It's what I don't know that I can't handle. If I don't know that this is something ugly, I can't fix it. I can't change it. I can't say, well, it's ugly, but it's me. You know, I don't have a choice then because I don't know.
So, moving on to this next quote, when we deny certain realities, they do not disappear. They merely withdraw into the unconscious, where they take a life of their own, where they take on a life of their own.
And that's what I was saying before. They become an independent process and they turn into symptoms like anxiety, depression, addiction, avoidance, gambling. I mean, but people don't connect the two because they've repressed the one. So they don't see the cause and effect relationship between the two, even though people are, well, why is this happening to me? So on and so forth. But it's the denial of certain realities that then make the person symptomatic.
So,
Well, if you sit on a couch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to become symptomatic.
well, and this would be an example of when people continuously compartmentalize things that are happening and just leave it up on the shelf, so to speak, and never bring it back down to process, whatever that may be, right? So that could be something that was tragic that occurred, something that happened when they were younger, something that happened recently, how they feel that things that they don't wish to deal with, but they deny it, they don't think about it, they push it aside. And then the body says, wait a second, no, 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 it's still here. And because you won't come and address it here, I'm going to show you in other ways, because you're not listening, that it's here. And that's where you're talking about the anxiety, pull this out, any of the stuff that comes out. It's talking to you, saying, hey, I'm here still, right?
Yeah, you're the healthiest when your body's the most silent.
Hmm. At ease, not dis ease. You're not dissing the ease, you're at ease, right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand what that means.
Well, what means?
your body being silent.
Well, you don't pay attention to your head unless you have a headache.
Well, I think there becomes a desensitization process as well,
Okay, but you're
right?
going on a whole different thing.
Okay.
Pain is there to get your attention to tell you something's wrong. If you're not feeling pain, then your body's telling you it's well. Now there may be other things because sometimes you don't like with cancer you don't always know you have it because it doesn't always give you pain. Okay, there are other symptoms that come along the way that then help you discover it. But pain is a way, like we talked about pain and pleasure in the past, is your system telling you that this is something you need to pay attention to. But most people want to avoid pain because pain hurts. There's all kinds of drugs, prescription and non-prescription and things that people do to mute the pain. But then they don't get the message that's in the pain. Hunger is pain, but we pretty much know the message that's in that. Eat, you see. With anxiety, we don't know so much what the pain is trying to tell us.
And there's so many people out there who can't sleep, who are grinding their teeth at night. And I hear this, and to me, it's just one of these symptoms that you're talking about, potentially.
Well, it is because you're leaving stuff unprocessed. You're not honoring and hosting the self in a way that meets the wants, needs, and desires that you are genetically predisposed to fulfill. Another way of saying the same running destiny to river. Because we are all genetically predisposed to have different purpose and meaning in life.
So for this next quote, I think I would like you to read this one.
By denying and disowning, we become like Dr. Gazaniga's split brain patients who are out of touch with the non-talking side of their brain. Well, in that we saw how the two brains are working independent of each other. And you go on YouTube and see one of those, because it was taped. It's called Split Brain Joe. And in that, because they cut the corpus callosum, which is the cable that connects the two brains. Again, they're independent of each other, but they're also connected, like your head and body are connected with your neck, okay? The two brains are connected by the corpus callosum. And they did that to cure them of epilepsy, which at the time was incurable. And they didn't feel different than they had before until this Dr. Gazaniga was able to play games with their brains, And so basically what it is one hand didn't know what the other was doing. And we don't need to have a split brain to be that dissociated. You're dissociated from your glasses until I bring it, to mind. Okay. And that is something that is adaptive because it would be annoying. I knew of this autistic child and he couldn't have clothes on because it was so disruptive sensorily to him that he couldn't wear clothes. But yet we have to wear clothes. So the ability to dissociate from that is good. But the problem when we deny, disown, and repress, we become like the split brain patients because that information is there and it's impacting our behavior, but we don't know why it's doing that what is causing that because we're denying and disowning and repressing it in the first place. And then the conscious mind always asks why, but it never can come up with the right answer because that information is being repressed. It's being kept from crossing that boundary.
So it'll most likely come up with an incorrect answer just to fill in the blanks.
Well, yeah, because it fills in the blanks based on the information it has.
Right. I think that it's very odd that we have two brains and that this is not something that is basic knowledge for the public. How is that? Why is that? I don't know. Scientifically, it's there, right? But it's not this basic knowledge that anybody wants to really discuss. And it's very important because of the awareness portion.
I agree with you. And I would say that's so true on so many hundreds of thousands of bits of information. But the other part of me wants to say that I don't know that even if it were available, that many people would want to learn it because it's work. You really have to think. It reminds me of one time years ago, my colleague and I were in the mall and we were walking and my other brother was walking with us and he was listening to us and he goes, "Oh my God, you guys always talk this way. It's so much work, And for us, it wasn't. It was just our natural dialogue. But for him, it's like, "Oh my God, you're doing so much work." And a lot of people don't want to do the work.
But it's interesting because they'll do all kinds of work that is not really productive for themselves, but thinking that it is for others, and which just gets them further and further away.
Let me use this analogy. It's like somebody trying to be good at math that doesn't need to be good at math. Why would they bother? You see, like a lot of people, oh, why do I have to take those classes? I'm never going to use algebra in real life. I'm not. It's the same thing with some of the things we're talking about. Is why do I'm not gonna, never going to use it or whatever, and it's too hard a language to learn. That's the other thing, because math is a language. You're learning a foreign language. Some people are innately good at math. They're geniuses at it because it's just natural to them. But for most people, it's traumatic because it's so hard to learn and so impossible. And it requires too much work, and they just don't have the time or patience or interest in doing it. And to really master some of this stuff, it requires that. So they bite on what you see is in social media and public knowledge, and they get to see a slice of the pie, but it's only a slice, and the slice doesn't always let you know what the whole pie looks like.
It's good.
Short attention span.
There is a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it can't be worked on.
Who said it?
Who said what?
That it can't be worked, that it can be worked on.
I say it can be worked on.
Ah.
It didn't work. And experiences and life experiences and stuff like that.
But it's not a preference. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you. But why I think it can't be done, because it's not a preference.
Until it is. Until certain things get to a point in their life to where they're able to.
Okay, but how can you have a preference for something that you don't even know exists?
Until it's revealed.
But it's not revealed. That's the whole problem we're talking about.
But it can get revealed for some people. You're looking at one.
But it still doesn't put it out there. It just doesn't.
No, not for the masses.
Okay, but that's where it needs to go, is to the masses. That's the problem.
Oh, okay.
It's the masses that are malnourished, but they don't know they're malnourished because it's sweet. They like their cotton.
All you gotta do is just try 1% at a time.
I love the optimism, but it's like a tsunami. I just need to climb a higher. No, that tsunami, you're not going to do a thing to stop that tsunami. There's the earthquake, and then there's the tsunami. Okay, one person is not going to, and then no number of people is going to stop the tsunami. And we're in that tsunami stage. That's who isn't scared nowadays. Okay, good for you. That's why you can be so optimistic.
I can be so optimistic because my personal myth allows me to, and it does not allow for fear to take over.
Is it fear, or
Right.
as pessimists like to say, I'm just realistic?
No.
Well, I used to be like you. I used to be optimistic and believing that the tide can change. And it was probably 30 years ago. And I remember having that discussion with someone else. He goes, no, I think we're too far gone. He's kind of where I am and you're kind of where I was. And I'm saying this 30 years later, and it's way, way past that time,
So I understand what you're saying.
Or too overwhelmed with what is out there in their information streams. That is slightly too fast, shifts to to ADHD in terms of even here's the thing I'll say, which I think is very important. The way people take in information is in a catalog form, not a narrative. Okay, in a catalog, it doesn't. What's on page 1 in no way has an impact on what's on page 6 or 7 or 10 or 15. In a narrative, what happens in page 1 has an impact throughout the narrative, you see. Even how news is reported, it changes. The narrative is lost. There's no, they'll say, well, I'll let you know in 2 weeks. Guess what? No one ever asked them in 2 weeks what they said, I'll let you know in 2 weeks. So the narrative is gone. The story is gone. You just get bits and pieces. And when you get bits and pieces, you really do not see what the picture looks like. So that's a problem with how we do the information. It's very much catalog fashion. Oh, now we're on page 6. Ooh, I like that. Look at that. Let's go viral with that. So their ability to process information, it's too fast. It's too overwhelming. It's too much. And then you have algorithms which tell people what they want to hear or see what they want to see. So there's no choice in that when it's already biased to begin with, because they know people go to where they can hear what they want to hear, and they move away from things that they don't want to hear.
In general, I do agree with you. And
Wait a minute. Let me take that in.
I qualified that with in general.
This is a once in 100 year from. Hold on. Let me enjoy it, jeez.
Are you going to put it in the phone, put today's date, so like a year from now we celebrate it?
I know it was qualified. I generally,
Yeah, in general, I agree with you in this.
and I'll take that because in general, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm generalizing.
But
There are exceptions.
and I keep how I look at things in my optimism.
And I'm more than willing to be wrong. I truly, that is my preference.
That would be amazing, right? Like if you if
But I just see things get worse and worse in that.
I know.
From a professional point of view, from a scientist, from a psychologist, from people that see real life people every day that are,
Yeah.
living life.
But then there's that one that just comes through and it's like, wow, okay, there's something there, there's some hope. And so that's what helps me not only keep the optimism.
No hope is in Pandora's box.
Yes.
You do know that.
Yes.
Why are you slapping the floor?
Because you said it's before.
I know I said it again. I had to remind you.
Don't have to remind me.
Hope can be a dangerous thing. I sound so.
And an amazing thing as well. Yeah, maybe that's why, like, something about me is like wanting to smack you right now.
There you go.
Yeah, that could be it. That's what's going on.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, it is only when we stop denying, disowning, or repressing.
People say host and honor.
Mhm.
Okay, you're hosting it. It's and honoring the information, and since it's a part of you, you're not turning it against you by dishonoring it and being unwilling to host it. Who likes to be snubbed? Who likes to be rejected? Well, when you reject parts of yourself, that's how those parts feel when you do that to them. Oh, you think you're better than me, huh? That's what the one part feels, the other part is telling them.
Yes. I was just answering your question. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Okay. This portion really just ties it all together. And it's saying what you were saying here. It is only when we stop denying, disowning, or repressing that which is seeking expression within us that we can achieve that special sense of harmony, inner light, heightened awareness, and relatedness. So that's just really tying it all together of what can happen for you if you stop denying and repressing. And so I think it's a very awesome thing to be able to feel what that harmony feels like. And it's once you feel that, you don't want to not feel that.
That is true. Once you feel it, and it is a lifelong process. That's the thing. At any time, we can become stagnant. And it's easy to become stagnant because we get caught up in our rituals and our habits and our routines and can be mindless because you don't really have to think about that. You come home, you're sitting in the same seat all the time. You don't really, where am I sitting today? You just sit there. And so it robs one then of discovery.
Yes. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, other than I know I take a negative position every now and then. I'm really very positive and optimistic.
Mm.
And like I said, I am willing to be wrong, but I'm not.
Stick by your feelings. It's okay if it's a little bit negative, right?
But I was going to say, but I'm not willing to be under an illusion either.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
I like it.
We will reality test.
I'm okay with that. And I think the listeners are too. So thank you for joining Dr. Rini and I on this journey behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Join us next time as we will discuss the sixth pathway, which is listed under avoidance. Remember to subscribe and like, and questions or comments are welcome below. Now ask yourself, what part of your life might destiny be trying to speak through right now? Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, destiny isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. Until next time, be well.